Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the breakout session for East and Northeast Asia. For your information, this breakout room covers 5 countries: China, DPRK, Mongolia, Japan, Republic of Korea. So if your country of interest is not in this group and you would like to change it to different breakout room, you can do so by clicking the button at the bottom of your screen, and then you can choose a different breakout room. Also, please note that this meeting is being recorded, as you already know from the last main session. And also participants will be on mute with a video off. Also, as we practice, we are also receiving questions from all the participants. So please put your comments and questions in the chat box after the presentation of Subregional SDG Progress. We will have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A session. First, let me, so before starting the session, we will have a group photo. Can I invite you to turn on your video camera? Can I invite all participants joining here, turn on your video? Thank you. All right, so 1, 2, 3. So one more. So we will take another photo. 1. One, 2, 3. Thank you. So we will move on to presentation. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Ganbold Baasanjav, head of East and Northeast Asia Office, for his presentation.
Thank you, Sangmin. Distinguished guests. Let me start by showing you an overview of the SDG progress in our 5 countries in East and Northeast Asia. According to our assessment, the subregion as a group is almost on track on achieving on goal number 1, no poverty, and goal 6, clean water and sanitation, highlighted in blue. Meanwhile, the subregion made relatively good progress on goals 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9, as highlighted in green. However, progress is lacking on most of the environmental-related goals. In particular, trends need to reverse on climate action, goal 13, and marine, goal 14, where the subregion is moving in the opposite direction, highlighted in red. On a positive note, countries have recently made new and ambitious commitments to climate action and paid more attention to marine environment. By the way, please note that the current progress assessment does not necessarily reflect the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, depending on the availability of updated information. To zoom in on the targets, this is what the SDG achievement of the subregion would look like in 2030 if the current pace is continued. Many targets are being achieved, for example, access to basic services on goal 1, safe drinking water on goal 6, to name a few. We also have various areas, as you can see in yellow and red, which requires accelerated efforts or even the reverse the current trend to achieve the targets. These clearly illustrate the efforts needed under each goal. For example, on good health and well-being, most of the progress is related to maternal health, while other targets require extra efforts to accelerate the progress. Specifically, target 3.3 on communicable diseases and target 3.8 on universal health coverage are closely related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which warrant special attention. As mentioned earlier, there is a large gap in progress in environmental related targets such as Goal 13, climate action, and Goal 14, life below water. To accelerate the SDG progress, let me emphasize the need to strengthen subregional cooperation to address challenges such as communicable diseases and climate change to complement the national efforts. Despite the recent progress, lack of data for robust assessment is a challenge for the subregion, as shown in gray color. In fact, only 39 of the indicators have sufficient data to measure the progress, well below the ESCAP's region's average at 48%. Data production should thus be accelerated with the support of governments, development partners, and United Nations agencies. Also, the lack of various data and environment-related goals should be addressed by enhanced scientific assessments at national and subregional levels. One of the ESCAP's contribution is tracking SDG progress. For progress assessment in the report and more results for the subregion, you can find them at the SDG Gateway. Also, please try the new National SDG Tracker tool and create your own SDG dashboards in just a few clicks. Let me move on to the socioeconomic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a key theme of the report. For example, on the economic front, the report suggests that in East and Northeast Asia, labor income losses look relatively modest compared to other subregions, partly due to a faster and strong economic recovery. On the social front, students in the subregion lost 1/3 of the academic year in 2020. It will have significant long-term effect on the academic and career development of young people. Furthermore, students in low-income families have been impacted more than others. So governments need to pay attention to these uneven impacts among students. Besides these statistics, let me share some observations from our subregional multi-stakeholder forum took place last November. The pandemic has disproportionate effect on vulnerable populations and widened the pool of vulnerable people. The crisis has accelerated digitization, which has both positive and negative aspects. For one, it widened the digital divide and disadvantaged those left behind in accessing the technology. Despite the temporary reduction of greenhouse gas emission, the pandemic has added pressure on environment. For example, increase in medical wastes and plastic wastes. To build back better from COVID-19 and accelerate SDG progress, let me highlight 2 points. First, the subregion can leverage its technological advancement and promote inclusive digital transformation. Second, in view of the stagnant progress in environmental related goals, countries are recommended to spur sustainable and green recovery. More analysis can be found in our report, turning the COVID-19 pandemic crisis into collective SDG actions in Northeast Asia on our ESCAP's website. To continue the discussion of sustainable development and the COVID-19 pandemic, I invite you to join the Asia Pacific Forum of Sustainable Development that's kicking off next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganbold. Dear participants, we are waiting for your questions and comments. While we are waiting, so we have already received a few questions from number of participants. But before moving on to question, let me introduce Gemma, Chief Director of Statistics, who made a presentation. So she will be also available to respond to your question. Okay, so one question received from Chinese University of Hong Kong, Professor Sung Chung. So, Mr. Ganbold, so the question is about the strategy. Yeah, you highlighted regulation and environment-related goals, and what is your strategy or our strategy to reverse the current regulation in environment-related goals?
Thank you. In our sub-region in Northeast Asia, so the major economies of the world, at the same time, some major polluters, in both in air pollution, oceans, and the pollution on the degradation of soil and earth. So the recent commitments by the major countries in Northeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, to achieve the decarbonization in 2050 and 2060, that would have a great positive impact on achieving our goal on climate-related targets. We look forward to having more closer and intensive cooperation among nations in Northeast Asia and beyond to achieve this ambitious target. For that cooperation program, so ESCAP is happy to facilitate the dialogue and cooperation among the member countries of Northeast Asia, specifically using our well-established platform. It's called Northeast Asia Subregional Program for Environmental Cooperation. In short, we call it ESCAP, covering 5 thematic areas addressing addressing air pollution and land degradation and desertification and marine protected areas, and also the nature conservation programs. So this is the only intergovernmental multilateral mechanism that we ESCAP we manage for cooperation to tackle this climate crisis in our sub-region.
Thank you, Mr. Ganbold. And we received a question from through chat box. Seems this is relevant to Gemma. The question is, based on the latest available data, which SDGs would have the most adverse impact by the pandemic?
Thank you very much, Sangmin, and good morning to you all, and my colleague Ganbold from the office. So thank you very much for these questions. So at this stage, the analysis that we've undertaken for the 2021 Progress Report really shows that the potential impact of COVID-19 is across all of the goals. I've highlighted there in particular some challenges from UNFPA analysis around maternal mortality, which relates to Goal 3 on good health and well-being. Also an analysis from the UN Development Programme on poverty, which impacts on Goal 1. Our colleagues in UNESCO, our regions are already really finding it challenging to provide quality education, meet the challenges of Goal 4. And the impact of COVID on education is expected to really show people leaving education or not able to be part of the academic year. We've also seen the impact on Goal 8, which is around jobs, and we've seen impact on Goal 11, which is sustainable communities and cities. What we haven't been able to truly gauge yet is the impact of COVID-19 on the environmental goals. And this is probably for a few reasons. And that's because these are very hard to measure and there is a lot of data availability challenges. And as we've highlighted here in East and Northeast Asia, a lot of attention is being given even before the COVID crisis to the environmental dimensions of the 2030 agenda. So from a statistical point of view, the efforts that we've just heard from Mr. Ganbold about the priorities in East and Northeast Asia, I think remain the priorities even despite COVID-19, and the focus on maintaining the digital connection, cooperation, and addressing the environmental concerns in the sub-region. That we expect, as the data comes through in the next few years, that the good progress that you've seen there in North and Central Asia across so many of those goals could well be impacted by COVID-19, particularly the goals 1, 3, 4, and on jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. So we have received 2 more questions, but I guess the second one is more relevant to you. So let me bring this question to you first, and then after that we will respond to the question received earlier. This is, how is the situation related to sex disaggregated data in East and Northeast Asia, not only regarding to SDG 5?
Thank you very much, Sangmin. So wherever possible, we have been able to incorporate disaggregated data into our analysis in assessing where do we stand now on the goals, as well as where are we likely to be on the targets by 2030. It has been a challenge though, because there is many data gaps, there's data gaps for the indicators, and then there's also data gaps for disaggregated data. And there is a lot of work going on to try and address these data gaps for disaggregated data by making use of innovative data sources like big data, satellite data, mobile phone data to try and address the data gaps. I also mentioned in the plenary that statistical operations, in particular population censuses, have been impacted by the COVID-19, and population censuses are a very big source of disaggregated data for many of the SDG indicators. On Goal 5 in particular, gender equality, we really are finding this a challenge from a data point of view to address the indicators under Goal 5. And a lot of work, particularly led by UN Women, has been undertaken to address the challenges of Goal 5, but also data disaggregation across all of the relevant goals. So I'm hopeful that in the next few years, we will see the use of innovative approaches to data collection, the results from the 2020 round of population censuses, and the work going on within the statistical community, that we will see improvements in disaggregated data, not only for gender, but for rural and urban, disability status, migrant status, and income groups as well. All of the data disaggregations that are needed and that are recommended for monitoring the 2030 agenda. Thanks, Sangmin.
Thank you, Gemma. Perhaps this might be the last question. So, Mr. Ganbold, so the question from me is, the idea of a green recovery as a response to the pandemic is great, but how can this be communicated more powerfully as everyone seems to just want a life back to normal without realizing that it's a kind of a normal life that has led to the current situation. You earlier highlighted your hope, expectation on carbon neutrality. Meanwhile, the presentation by Gemma also highlighted that various more than 80% of economic recovery plan does not consider environmental component, does not have really environmental consideration. So this is related that highlights the concern, his or her concern about communication on green recovery. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So this really the building back better from this current pandemic is through this green recovery. This pandemic really become the wake-up call for all nations, countries, governments, institutions. And so this again demonstrated that how this world become interdependent. So this all the goals, specifically the SDGs on climate action, nature conservation, marine, so and it's all interconnected. How it's interconnected, and so the governments need to pull together with civil society, private sector, academia, and institutions, and United Nations, and multilateral financing institutions. This is really the time when the whole of society and the whole of the government approach is needed, based on this inclusive and networked multilateralism. So the governments really are urged to pull all together in the same direction on all the targets for all the SDG goals at the same time. So we will be able to turn or regress those SDGs where we are really moving in the wrong direction. So again, this inclusive and network multilateralism is the key for this green recovery to achieve the most of the goals where we are need to take more serious action.
Thank you. There is one more question. Thank you, Professor Ng, for your proactive participation. And so this question goes to Gemma. Given so many gaps in the SDG indicators, would the ESCAP recommend a list of data to be collected in census data collection?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sangmin, for this question. So the 2030 agenda is really an exciting agenda for the data community because it covers 17 goals that are covering economic, environment, and social dimensions of development. And the population census is a major data source, along with civil registration and vital statistics systems for many of the social goals 1, 2, 3, health and well-being, education, poverty. We also have a range of goals where our economic collections and our business surveys are really vital to being able to fill the data challenges. And then the environmental goals give us a great opportunity to make use of environmental data, satellite data, remote sensing data to address the data needs of the 2030 agenda. A lot of work is underway and has been underway for a long time in the global statistical community to highlight how to address the data challenges of the 2030 agenda. And it's a combination of population censuses, agricultural censuses, satellite data, mobile phone data, disaggregation tools and methods that we have available to us. And there is quite a lot of really good support that's being provided to countries to strengthen their statistical systems to address the data challenges. We're seeing in East and Northeast Asia, where you are, lots of innovation by your countries. Korea has, the Republic of Korea are making a lot of use of big data sources and they've just hosted the 6th Forum on big data for official statistics. Japan is also doing a lot of work with innovative use of big data. And in China, we've just established a regional hub on the use of big data for addressing the data challenges of the SDGs. And Mongolia is been very active, particularly with UN Women, on addressing the data disaggregation challenges and communicating the statistical value through the 2030 lens. So I'm really very hopeful, particularly from the countries in your region who are really seeing the data challenges in the 2030 agenda as an opportunity to strengthen their statistical systems. And they're working very closely with policy departments and the SDG coordination units to really showcase the power of the statistical officers and statistical systems to address the gaps. So I think the population census, coming back to your question, is definitely one important data source, but we have so many other data sources. And in East and Northeast Asia, I'm seeing a lot of creativity and innovation and partnerships and cooperation between the statistical system and the policy agencies who are entrusted with delivering on the 2030 agenda. Thank you very much, Sangmin.
Thank you. Thank you all the questions which make this session interactive. And with that, let me hand over microphone to Mr. Ganbold for his closing of the session.
Thank you very much for your active participation. And thank you, Gemma and colleagues, for your wonderful intervention. And thank you all colleagues who shared your valuable time to share their update on SDG progress in Northeast Asia. Thank you and stay safe and healthy.